Well, good morning and welcome to this morning's reflection. As we come to the end of this week, in which we have looked at desire, and I hope you found it helpful because I have found it helpful. It's a good reminder that we need to know our desires, to know our superficial desires and to know our deep desires, to discern those desires so that we realize which are the desires that are directing our lives. It's important to choose that we'd be directed by those deepest desires, those God-given desires. It's a silly example, I know, but one of our desires, we all have this desire, is to be healthy, is to take care of our bodies because they're a gift from God. That's a deep desire. And so when I have this inclination, call it a desire, to eat large amounts of chocolate cake, that particular desire is powerful. Or perhaps a box of Easter eggs. But if I look at those Easter eggs and I think of my deepest desire, which is to be healthy, in that moment it is easier for me to choose the desire to be healthy because that is my deepest desire, and to set aside those more superficial desires that actually don't lead me along the path that I truly want to go. And so asking ourselves, what is it that I most desire, is very helpful in our spiritual growth. It's also important for us to recognize that our God is a God of desire. If he was without desire, he would not have created us, nor would he have sought a relationship with us. And to think that God's desire is for us, and therefore his action is rooted in this deep, deep desire to be in relationship with us. And since we are created in his image, then we too reflect his desires. And for this reason, we find that our deep longings are really a reflection of God's longings. Our deepest longings then cause us to move towards God, to move in the direction of his desire. And when these desires direct us, we find ourselves moving toward a place of peace. So it might be helpful when we're looking at desires to think, is this desire reflective of God's deepest desire for me, for you, or for humanity at large? And if it isn't, then perhaps we need to reconsider whether those particular desires that might be welling up within us are helpful for us or not. Our God is a God of love. And to love means to be in relationship with another. Love needs expression, and God is love. He loves because he cannot not. It is his very being. He is filled to the brim with a love that consistently touches us at our very core. His love flows into us all the time, and we need only to be humble enough to receive it. This love that flows towards us is the very same love that flows through the Trinity. And so to love is to share in the divine life of the Trinity. God's desire is to so draw us to himself that we will come to know ourselves as the beloved of God. And so it is unfortunate that there has been a strong tradition that has evolved over time, particularly in the early theology of the church, and it remains with us today, that God is passionless. That God at his very best is detached and without passion, without desire. And this makes it hard for us to see God as a God of desire, or to see desire as having any validity in our own spiritual growth. And we owe this kind of theological perception to the late Roman Stoic philosophy, which conceived of human passion as a disease of the soul, i.e., that passion was intrinsically evil. And of course this led to an image of God as passionless, and so therefore this led to a veneration or an aspiration of Christians to be without passion, and Christian leaders to be without passion. And so we need to recover a sense of a God who has desires, who can be vulnerable. And nothing expresses that vulnerability more clearly than Philippians chapter 2 and verses 6 to 7. Did not count equality with God something to be grasped, but he emptied himself, taking the form of a slave. God's desire is to be known and to be loved. And so he pours himself out. He empties himself out into creation. It is true that God is a mystery, but we mustn't only see God as mystery, because God is also knowable, in that he reveals himself to us and draws us to himself. God is mystery, but God is also personally knowable, not in his entirety, but we can have a deep and abiding relationship with a God who is deeply personal and cares and desires us. And in us we find our own desires flourishing because we are made in his image. May you have a blessed day today. Amen.